President Bola Tinubu has assented to the electricity bill, which empowers states, companies and individuals to generate, transmit and distribute electricity. The new electricity law repeals the Electricity and Power Sector Reform Act of 2005 and consolidates the laws relating to the Nigerian electricity supply industry. The Senate had passed the electricity bill in July 2022 to solve the sector's challenges. President Muhammadu Buhari had signed 16 constitutional amendments in 2022, one of which pertains to the devolution of powers on the national grid system. Well, this grants states the constitutional authority or right to enact laws that allow them to generate, distribute and transport electricity within its boundaries, including, of course, territories formerly covered only by the national grid. And speaking on the enactment of the new act, President Bola Tinubu says the constitutional amendment permits Nigeria's 36 states to generate electricity.
Joining us to take a look at the newly signed law is a former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, and Arise News analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi, who is an associate professor. Thank you, Dr. Amadi, for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you.
Good. Now, about 85 million Nigerians lack access to grid electricity in Nigeria. Tell us how this new law will help prevent power loss. Is this the magic wand we've been waiting for?
Well, I think it's not yet a magic wand, but some kind of build-up probably to that. But essentially, there's been debate. The 2005 Electric Power Sector Reform Act, 2005, quite a long time, and things have changed. The market model that inspired the British model, the Indian model, that inspired the national electric power policy they have all changed in their country. So it makes sense that stakeholders are saying amend now. So this law, new law, tries to recreate the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, but did three things. First is clamor for state participation. You see, there's been this notion, which is not totally correct, that states could not play in the electricity market on the old law. That's not true.
Right.
I licensed Lagos State. IBM has power. Okwama has power. Rivers IPP, which they sold to the owners of IBM Power, energy company. Edo partnered significantly with Azura. So the states could play in this market. What they couldn't do before now, they couldn't distribute and they couldn't transmit for good reason, because these are public goods. These are networks that you can have multiple lines running. But many states felt there was a big disclaimer. Oh, why can't we distribute power? I remember when I was chairman and Mechi went to meet, Governor Mechi then went to meet Jonathan. I said, look, I have power in River State. Why can't I feed myself 247? And the president thought it was going to be true. He called me and said, look, you can't, because if you do that, take all the power to Rivers, Port Harcourt Disco, serving River State. The rest of those will have less commerciality. So now I think that voice has grown now. People say, okay, give the states. Now, if you watch this new act, states cannot do intrastate. They can only do their state.
Within their own state.
Now,
okay.
Most states are not viable for good distribution network, because to be viable, they have to have both the quantity of power to sell and also have the customer base. Again, network, transmission. You cannot just have your own transmission distribution. So we're going to see a lot of federal power sector moving. NERC will still regulate intrastate. We're going to see also states maybe coming together into a region. What may be more reasonable is a regional grid, in the sense that many states could come together. So this law removes that constitutional barrier. Again, it also mandates some degree of renewable energy. We've not been doing well in renewable energy. So distributors and generators have obligation, soft obligation, to get involved in renewable. Maybe that will provide incentive to get more renewable into the grid. Today we have zero renewable energy in the grid. We have standalone solar, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The third thing that is important here is that states can now license their own regulator. Okay. Those who have Lagos, Edo, and Kaduna has been grandfathered in this law, meaning they already exist, so take notice of them, they work. Now, the point here is, even the old law, Lagos State set up its electricity board. While in the old law, I did a lot of work with Lagos under Fashola, they did great work, using existing framework. So, but what this has made is make explicit what may be implicit. So states now know, by the way, Imo State government under Emeka Hedon set up the Imo Power and Rectification Agency, which he made me chairman. Now when Hope came, he didn't dissolve it, he didn't recognize us. So this idea that states couldn't play in the market is false. Many states were not creative enough. Many states are not, entrepreneurial.
Okay, so now that the president has assented to this, what really do you expect the states to begin to do now? I mean, you're saying they should go regional because some states may not have the wherewithal to, the financial muscle to be able to drive it. What needs to be done now?
What they should do now is take this law to say this has opened further the opportunity, open the door. Now you can transmit, you can create your own agency. Of course, you have to follow next federal rules in terms of interconnections. But look at something like customer service. States can do that very well. Set up a consumer protection, electricity consumer regulator that uses next rules and apply them. The states can, using subject now, go into renewable. Many states, like the northern states with solar, some of the coastal states, even all the states in Nigeria, with level of radiation, they have significant level of capacity for solar. States can go biomass. States can now look at, can we use micro and mini grids to ramp up power? Now, this will be subject always to commerciality. There's an assumption with Nigerian poverty index, with low purchasing power, with spike in energy costs, transport costs. The question is, do Nigerian consumers have that capacity in some of these states to finance a viable electricity sector? Because financing is key. Are you going to work with private sector? Again, you have to clean up your act. You have to create your budget, your finances that are legible and bankable and therefore reliable. So if you're a state that has not got transparency in procurement, a state has not put up standard documentation, you won't attract private investor. Look, this business is a very risk-averse business.
Okay, but it can bring a lot of IGR for the states if they are very serious about it.
If you are serious, so this is not like a magic bullet. Okay, silver bullet. Once you get it, it's done. Okay, you have to develop the capacity to attract the investment because this law does not give you the financing.
I was actually coming there because Dr. Amadi, when you were chairman of NERC, apart from setting and reviewing electricity tariffs, part of your job was to issue licenses to operators and investors.
Private sector.
Now, so tell us about the investor participation, because you spoke just now about the fact that certain states may not be able to have the financial muscle, the financial capacity to go about this. What about investor participation?
Absolutely, and that's the key. Look, before I left, we licensed over 40,000 to 50,000 megawatts of power. Everybody was taking license because they thought it was a national bazaar. At a point, I threatened to revoke all the license because we're not seeing milestones being accomplished. Okay, now everybody say, "Oh, let's get privatization working." But since then, apart from Aba Power, geometrics that have been there for like over a decade, no private generator or private anybody has come to this grid apart from Azura. That's portfolio financing, all kinds of expensive power because they have to. That's the first project finance power project in Nigeria. Now, so what I tell you is this: this law basically provides a potential. You have to deliver on that potential by first being a smart government, entrepreneurial governance. And what I mean simply is, look, you can't run this government as if you're an authoritarian. You have to have process, rules, documentation. So an investor will look at IMO and say, for example, the demand-supply gap is huge here. They've got this renewable resource we can use. So what's the framework? Where's the independent regulator? Where are bankable processes? We know that not tomorrow the governor receives a call from financier. So the idea here is few states, I look at the state they mentioned, Lagos. Lagos has had a long period of preparation for this.
Yes.
Edo, of course, Adams tried, but of course Obaseki was part of the earlier efforts to finance some of these projects. So he understands it. Look at Kaduna, Aerofy, working in BPE, understanding this game. So it's not by chance that the states that are grandfathered are states that their chief executives sort of have some understanding about the private sector and financing. And they need to, even if you are still corrupt, but they need to have some kind of process. People can. So if you don't have process, you just wake up and you say, okay,
of course, I like this. It's not just states that are allowed to do this now. Individuals and companies.
That's the point.
Let's talk
individuals,
about
look,
that
under the old act, individuals, anybody can apply for a license once it's not more than, if it's more than 5 megawatts, for example, you got to get a license, otherwise get a permit. So what this law has done is that anything less than a megawatt or about a megawatt, no license, no permit. So you can construct. Maybe you'll be subject to some rudimentary safety, monitoring. Now, what this does is very good because in Europe now we have what we call pro-consumers. People produce through solar panel and sell to the market. So many of us are power generators. You have solar panel, maybe you get more than you need. You could sell to the grid. So it's good because the power infrastructure is becoming modular, smaller. We're moving away from the big grid because of digitalization to smaller grids. So if this law will open opportunity for people to get into 1 megawatts, micro, mini grids, self-use, it is permitted. It's very good. Now the law also tries to make provision for a process in which there's a transition. Some states will still be respond to NEC, but they not start building their own capacity. So in a way, it unbundles it in a way that some states can move fast in the curve and be able to use the market to have better power supply, while some other states are learning the rope. So this idea of straitjacketing development so that all Nigerians are either in poverty or go together. No.
Or everybody's rich. Let's talk about very quickly. I mean, you said it may not necessarily be the magic wand, to solve all our electricity challenges. What other laws would you like to see to strengthen Nigeria's power sector in a way that will make power more available? And is there a need to even review the privatization process?
Well, I don't think it's law. I think law is good enough law we have in the book. What we need now, better leadership at the regulatory end and the transition managers. You see, for development, it is strong federal bureaucracy to run power. I don't mean federalism, but again, you talk about transmission. You have to be competent, capable, and not corrupt.
Competent, capable, and not corrupt. Dr. Amadi, we're trying to put a lot of things in this brevity of time. What comes to mind readily now is ripple effect. And of course, we may also want to maybe want to talk about value chain.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about the vista of job opportunities that this portends.
For example, it talks about local content. Interestingly, many years ago, I did the first local content law. Nobody is using it. So local content law requires you to cacanitize it. What that means is that you have to match it with financial incentives. So what does that mean? You want most of the equipment to be localized. You have to get industrials together. You have to help them, get their footing. We'll be talking about metering.
Like metering, for
most
example.
Most of the metering, for example, is still foreign based. It's not on CKD. They bring it here, they assemble. If you have a strategic vision with the technology, with science and research, you move these guys in 2-3 years to getting the meters done here. So there's need for government as a driver, not financing. But it just like it happened in the US Manhattan Project. Government, public sector. I mean, Mariana Mazzuto of University of London, it says it is the public sector that instigates innovation. So if the state is not able to finance, to help, to crowd knowledge and research, you will move from importing parts and assembling it here to manufacturing. So that's
it will take the private sector for this to succeed.
Yeah, but it's take the state to provide incentives. Private sector will not on its own jump in and start because they could import and sell and make more money.
Maybe the first step has been taken now with this Electricity Act in place. Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight.